of the evening, but definitely not least. Those of you who were here previous meetings will have heard part one of Paula's speech, and we were all intrigued to hear the continuation of the story. So she is back today with continuation. On the agenda it does say it's a 4 to 6 minute speech. I don't know if you're aware of this at the back, timekeeper, but it's actually a 5 to 7 minute speech. So that's an error on there. So this is from the Engaging Humour Speech Pathway, part 2 of Paula's speech entitled Towpath Theatre. Welcome, Paula.
Madam President, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. So we finished part one in the glorious city of Bath. And then, as all good adventures must, we had to turn around and head back the way we came. Now, just for a bit of context, when you get a run of locks in a canal, they're often separated by an expanse of water, a bit like a small lake. And Bath has several of these, sensibly, so that they can keep their locks topped up, so that boats can navigate through the steep bits where the canal meets the river. Now, between two such locks, there was an area of an expanse of water, known locally as the Pound. It was very serene. Herons were posing, looking like they'd got life sorted out, and the wildlife quietly minding its own business. That was until we arrived and immediately upset the balance. So we rose through the first lock and I began to think something wasn't quite right. Something was a bit off. And then I realised that the Pound had almost completely drained of water due to overnight leaking through badly maintained locks. In other words, we run aground and we stuck and we were well and truly up the creek without a paddle, or more accurately, without any water. I need more water! Well, I did shout it, but I felt it was very reasonable and very non-dramatic like. Off marched the crew, windlasses in hand, up to the next lock, determined, like a determined rescue squad. The plan: go to the lock, fill it up, empty the water into the Pound, and free me. Simple in theory. However, in reality, they had to fill that lock 4 times in order to get enough water. So they were doing this with yet another growing audience. They all stood around and they quickly became yet another Towpath theatre audience. Why none of the other boaters who were coming down to meet us fancied joining in is one of life's mysteries, because they would have brought water with them, but they found it more entertaining just to stand and watch. Eventually though, coordinated and committed, we won the day. With aching arms, we floated free, we carried on with biceps unexpectedly impressive and spirits firmly intact. Onwards to Devizes we went, tackling more locks and more swing bridges and like a navvy crew, only with better snacks and more commentary. While nobody else was very keen to take the tiller, I spent most of my time at the stern, doing my very, very best impression of someone that absolutely knew what they were doing. Eventually, we reached the Carn Hill flight of locks in Devizes. Just looking at them made your legs ache. 29 locks, 237 feet, and a gradient that was unnecessarily ambitious. But being both wise and fond of tea, we decided that we would just moor up at the bottom and we would walk up instead. Excellent decision, made even better by the tea room at the top, where we got cream tea, scones and sandwiches. The next day, reinforcements arrived in the form of a sailing friend, boosting the crew and the competence levels. I was relieved of steering duties for a couple of days and got to experience the more physical side of canal life, balancing along the top of the lock gates like a tightrope walker who has questionable life choices. We cruised through beautiful scenery and eventually moored outside a lovely pub under some magnificent willow trees. And by now the canal had got very busy and we found ourselves sharing locks with other boats, doubling the teamwork, and of course racing each other at a blistering top speed of 4 miles per hour. Then, inevitably, disaster struck. One of the waste tanks declared itself full. That left us 2 choices. The first was to use all of us to use the other bathroom and heroically clench everything until we reached the boatyard the next morning, hoping that that too would not fill up. Or B, we could just take the plunge and quite literally, in every sense of the word, deal with it. Now, if anyone has ever experienced it, narrowboating has a funny way of accelerating friendships. Within days, all dignity has packed its bags and moved out. Privacy? A distant memory. In the end, we chose bravery. We chose to clench. Our week on the water was unforgettable. Everyone found their role, whether it was making the tea, engine rumbling into life to heat the water for us to have showers, and getting used to the delightful smells such as diesel and wet dog. And me, well, I mostly sat at the stern, watching the world drift by at a majestic walking speed, with the tiller in one hand and a mug of tea in the other, which, if you ask me, is just how narrowboating should be.
Lovely, a minute on the clock. Your last evaluation.